Right now, Rwandans are helping Rwandans use TFT to recover from the trauma of the 1994 genocide and move toward self-healing, productivity, and peace. But it began in 2006 in the United States in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, when a group of TFT practitioners were invited by Charity Hospital in New Orleans to treat its traumatized doctors, nurses, and other employees of America's famous teaching hospital. One of the team members, Dr. Paul Ose, had received an invitation from an employee at the U.S. Embassy in Rwanda to come to Kigali, the country's capital, to use TFT to treat street children at a shelter then known as El Shaddai. Several of the TFT team members working with Dr. Ose in New Orleans volunteered to join him and formed the first TFT Foundation team deployed to Rwanda. This is a story of how it all began and what's going on right now. Rwanda is a small country about the size of Vermont, and a country where in 1994, somewhere between 800,000 and 1 million Rwandans were killed in a period of just 6 weeks. Rwanda is located a bit south of the equator in the Great Lake region of Africa and is home to 3 ethnic groups, the Tutsis, the Hutus, and the Twa, clans that share a common culture and a common language. It is a country of rolling hills and was known as the Mille Collines, French for land of 1,000 hills. Soon after the TFT team landed at the airport in Kigali, they were immediately ushered to the shelter for street children, where they were greeted with welcoming speeches, song, and dance. Besides treating the children of El Shaddai, the team knew that they would need to teach the teachers at the school, and they knew that they would need to teach community leaders in many communities if the team's trauma relief efforts were going to grow to help the traumatized people of Rwanda. Here you see a student from the very first training in Rwanda receiving his TFT certification. During the deployment to the El Shaddai orphanage, a preliminary study was conducted, and the team returned the following year to teach more Rwandan community leaders and teachers. The study had demonstrated that TFT had been effective in treating these children, and that the effects held up and improved over time. The results of the study were published in the International Journal of Emergency Mental Health. After seeing and experiencing the healing effects of TFT, more community leaders requested training in thought field therapy, and a second training was given at St. Paul's in the center of Kigali, the populous capital city of Rwanda. That year, a third training, the fourth TFT training in Rwanda, was sponsored by Catholic Relief Services and USAID. At that time, Catholic Relief Services was working with Serve Centers, centers dedicated to providing services to orphanages, the handicapped, the blind, the mentally ill, and the disabled. Representatives of many of these centers were trained to use TFT to help those they served. Many more groups began requesting training in thought field therapy. In 2008, a TFT team again returned to Rwanda, responding to an invitation from Women's Foundation Ministries, an organization of women who were informally aiding the traumatized, especially widows, young adults who had been orphaned in 1994, and those diagnosed with AIDS. The TFT Foundation team trained 30 amazing women and conducted a random controlled study using thought field therapy. The Rwandan trainees pictured here are taking a break from their study and from practicing on one another. Pictured here are Suzanne Connolly, team leader and principal investigator, Alice Umunuzero, president of Women's Foundation Ministry, Carolyn Sakai, psychologist and TFT therapist, and Darling Clementine, the organizer of the training. Study protocol allows no pictures of study participants. But the newly trained Rwandan TFT facilitators shown here with their TFT training certifications were amazingly kind and effective as they led the study participants through the TFT algorithms. The study participants consisted of young adult orphans, widows and widowers, and men and women who had been diagnosed with AIDS. All participants took the pretests. One group received one TFT treatment by the newly trained Rwandan therapists 2 days after the pretest. Test instruments were the trauma symptom inventory and the modified indicators of PTSD levels. The therapists also took subjective levels of distress, or SUD levels, before, during, and at the end of treatments. SUD is a self-report measure not officially reported in the study. All participants then took post-tests so that the results of the treated group could be compared to any changes in the group that had not yet received treatment. Here are some results from this random controlled study. Just looking at the SUD level of the 135 study participants who were treated for 187 problems for an average of 55 minutes by the newly trained therapists, we see a drop of an average pre-SUD of around 9.5 to a post-SUD of a little under 1. We used only 99 of the completed trauma symptom inventories because of some high scores on the inconsistent response scales. Although the test developer, John Briere, allows that these scores can be high because of severe trauma, which was likely the case, we took the conservative approach and eliminated the TSIs with high scores on the inconsistent response scale. Interestingly, one statistician, Dr. Kathy Green, ran the statistics, leaving those eliminated inventories in the database, and the difference between the treatment group and the control group remained the same. The TSI consists of 13 scales, 10 of which measure various trauma symptoms. Here you see the differences between the treatment group and the waitlist control group on the scales as measured on the trauma symptom inventory. You can see that the differences on anxiety, depression, anger, intrusive memories, avoidance behaviors, and dissociation are significant at 0.001. This means that there is a probability of only 1 in 1,000 that this could happen by chance. The two sexual scales do not indicate a large difference between the treatment group and the waitlist control group. However, the two last scales depicted here measure self-esteem and addictive behaviors and are also highly significant. When we look at the modified PTSD symptom scale, which measures 17 PTSD symptoms on two subscales, frequency of symptoms and severity of symptoms, you can see that the tests of all participants who completed the study were used. You can see that on both scales of the MPSS, there is a highly significant difference between the post-tests of the treatment group and the waitlist control group. There is a PTSD cutoff score on the MPSS, and this slide illustrates the pre-test and post-test differences between the treatment group and the waitlist group. The TFT team returned in 2010 and retested 88 study participants. The results demonstrated in the initial study held up. There were no significant differences on the TSI post-test scores. The number of those meeting the criteria for PTSD, as measured on the MPSS, were even further reduced. While 40 met the criteria for PTSD before their treatment and 11 after their treatment, 9 met the criteria 2 years later. The types of trauma treated by the Rwandan therapists were of a severe nature. Issues included the trauma of seeing relatives, family, and neighbors killed, the trauma of being buried alive, sadness around those kinds of losses, sadness and anxiety around AIDS, and anger at the perpetrators of the genocide. All of those issues are most worthy to work on, especially the anger at the perpetrators of the genocide. To quote His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, "Genuine peace is based on inner peace, because you cannot build peace on the basis of anger. One reason TFT has become so popular in this part of Africa is that it is consistent with African values. To quote Zulu healer Vusa Mazulu Credo Mutwa, one of the most important lessons we can learn from our ancestors is the importance of getting rid of negative thoughts and memories because they hinder spiritual progress. He also says, you cannot let the past pain poison the present. And TFT has taken off and reached a high level of acceptance in this part of Africa. Here is the opening ceremony in 2009 before the TFT Foundation's 6th training, which was planned to do a random controlled study to determine if the results achieved in the 2008 study could be replicated. The opening ceremony was presided over by Bishop Servilianis of the Byumba Diocese of Rwanda. Following the 2009 study, villagers from throughout the rural north of Rwanda came to be treated with thought field therapy by the team and the newly trained Rwandan therapists. In that same year, the TFT team did another training for Catholic Relief Services, again training directors of centers for the blind, orphans, handicapped, mentally ill, and those diagnosed with AIDS. In 2010, 2 more thought field therapy trainings in the North. Happy 2010 graduates. Some of the Rwandan facilitators are professional therapists like clinical psychologist Adrian Naheo and Clementine Mahiru. Others are policemen, government workers, priests, ministers, nuns, and social workers. The Rwandan TFT facilitators come from all walks of life, and they number now in the hundreds. The TFT team was made most welcome in all communities they visited in Rwanda. In 2010, the team was invited to attend the ordination of a new priest friend, Father Bonaventure. Beating drums welcomed the attendees. Priests in Rwanda are ordained in their native villages. This particular village is in a very remote area among tea farms. It is a village that speaks a language apart from the rest of the country which speaks Kinyarwanda. It is not unusual in Rwanda to meet people who speak 6 or more languages. Almost everyone attends the party. In 2013, a small group, including a twice Emmy-winning cinematographer, Robert Stone, came to Rwanda to film the story of how Rwandan community leaders are now using TFT to help their communities. We had missed out on the ordination of one of the hardest working Rwandan TFT facilitators, Father Augustine. It is the custom in Rwanda that a newly ordained priest celebrates a Mass at the home of his parents soon after his ordination. Father Augustine waited almost a year to celebrate so that his American TFT family could join with his family in celebration. Kids in the neighborhood looking on as the party at Father Augustine's family home begins. Cinematographer Robert Stone was able to witness firsthand a TFT training being given by Minister Celestine Matabu in the city of Kigali. It was attended by a group of Catholic nuns who run a school for handicapped children, a group that works in a center for disabled soldiers, a nun who runs a domestic violence program, and several former 2008 study participants who are now treating others using TFT. Here you see the class with their graduation certificates. Another shot of the class. Money is always limited, and the entire training took place in a bar. Pastor Celestine and Father Augustine and their TFT teams of trained TFT facilitators were asked by government officials to be present at the annual genocide memorials in 2012 and in 2013. Where formerly the grieving were often taken to the hospital in ambulances and then medicated, it was demonstrated that most frequently this was not necessary when TFT could be administered. At the Kamonyo genocide site, where 38,000 bodies were recently recovered, the TFT team was able to assist the grieving. At the Genocide Memorial Museum, where many of the 800,000 to 1 million that died in 1994 are buried, they helped many others. In 2013, Pastor Celestine's team helped during the Genocide Memorial, and people came to respect the results his team of community leaders achieved. Commemorative officials now bring those who need help to the Rwandan TFT facilitators. Others, often professional therapists, bring the team members and the traumatized bottles of water as the work continues. Here you see a team member treating a traumatized boy in the arms of his mother. The memorials are well attended and go on into the night. Pastor Celestine's team worked 16 hours a day. It is often a group effort. The team works together. Mats are put out so that the traumatized can lay down if necessary. Reverend Celestine has developed a system that has been working efficiently and effectively. He asks for and is given 3 rooms. The first is for the non-hysterical but traumatized. The second for those who are hysterical and their suffering is out of control. He wants to isolate this group as the hysteria tends to be contagious as the community mourns the losses in their families and in their communities. The third room is an after-treatment recovery room where people are simply sat with by the team members as they rest. The Rwandans mourn and heal as a community. The Serena Hotel is one of Rwanda's most exclusive hotels. Reverend Celestine and his team were requested to be present and ready to assist during the commemorative ceremonies in 2013. The team will treat people as needed wherever they are. Here a team member is assisting a traumatized woman on the meeting room floor. The Seventh-day Adventist University, one of Kigali's largest universities, requested that their students be trained prior to the 2013 Genocide Memorial Ceremonies. Here is Reverend Celestine passing out the certificates to students at the close of the university-sponsored TFT training. 5,000 students and teachers were killed at the university during the 1994 genocide. The Kigali TFT team was also asked to train students and teachers at secondary schools. No PowerPoint at this school, probably no electricity. Thousands of Rwandans, young and old, are learning to use TFT to help themselves and others. Secondary school students practicing with each other. This year, in 2014, the Kigali TFT team was designated official trauma interventionists by the Rwandan Ministry of Health and officially assisted the traumatized during the 20th anniversary commemorative of the 1994 genocide. In the following slides, you see Reverend Celestine preparing university students at the Kigali Institute of Management to assist during the ceremonies. This year, Reverend Celestine and the Kigali team trained 185 university students from Rwanda's major universities to treat others during the commemorative ceremonies using thought field therapy. During the 2014 period of mourning, commemorating the 20th anniversary of the 1994 genocide, Pastor Celestine was invited to teach TFT on Musanze Radio Rwanda, broadcasting over the airwaves throughout the entire country. The work continues. It has touched the lives of thousands in Rwanda and in the surrounding Great Lake regions of Africa. Thank you for your help in making this all possible.